everybody. We're here with Tony Hoffman. How's it going?
It's going. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for being here. You look great. You like kind of match.
I'm a big branding marketing guy. So as you can see, that's I'm all branded out today.
You got the PH. What does the PH stand for?
Pause Hoffman.
Pause Hoffman.
But it's a play on words. So our slogan is find your balance.
Okay.
And we have a whole clinical approach to that as well. But
yeah.
PH, find your balance,
Yeah.
play on words. But it's actually Matt Pause, Tony Hoffman.
Okay.
And then the shape of the PH actually represents fitness.
Okay.
Yeah. So it's thought out, very well thought out.
Yeah.
And we worked with a kid from Bosnia to develop all of our marketing in terms of branding. So
nice.
Yeah.
And we'll get into all of that.
Yeah.
Yeah. I didn't even realize that until you just said that. I'm like, oh yeah.
It makes sense now, right?
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. Nobody just picks up on that right away. Then they're like, oh, okay.
But you need something like that that's like a perfect symbol, because like we're trying to get that right now for Recover Out Loud.
Mm-hmm.
We were picking like an R and just having that, you know, because you think about like Nike or any of these like brands, it's a simple.
Yeah. The emblem is usually the most attractive part of big brands. It's like Tesla.
Yeah.
Everybody knows what the Tesla emblem is. Everybody knows what the Nike swoosh is.
Right.
The Adidas 3 stripes. Like those are their emblems, right? And we really wanted to try and create an emblem that could be recognizable in the recovery field.
Nice.
Treatment industry,
yeah. Did you see the new Twitter one? I saw it this morning.
Is that, Twitter has a new one? Mm-hmm. No, I haven't seen it.
It's an X, which I thought was like,
Well, Threads is an @ symbol, right?
Yeah.
Probably, it was probably a quick change of direction.
You know what? Yeah.
They saw that and they were like, you know what? We need to come up with something that's similar to that. I don't know if it's to confuse people, but they keep things fresh. But I don't fuck with Twitter.
Me neither.
It's too
much.
Yeah. And I don't have a cat profile, and I never will have a cat profile pic or a dog. And I just don't like spending my time on social media hating on people.
Yeah, no, me neither.
And that's what Twitter feels like to me.
Yeah. Threads I'm still learning it. I feel a little confused.
Yeah, I won't use it much, but I just like the integration into Instagram where I can take a text post and not have to crop it or anything, and I can just straight share it to my feed or my story.
Yeah.
And it looks good.
Yeah.
So I'll use it for that, and that'll be rarely ever.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. So you do a lot of motivational speaking.
Mm-hmm.
I was doing my research on you, and I just think it's so cool. And thank you so much for doing everything that you do and impacting the community. How did you start speaking in front of people?
So I knew I wanted to speak when I was in prison. That was kind of, I didn't know what I wanted with my life until I went to prison. And right before I went to prison, I had a spiritual awakening. It took me to Christ. I don't push my faith on anybody, but my spiritual experience led me to Jesus Christ. And I did a lot of prayer and meditation, and I started to realize that, you know, I had purpose, but I had purpose only in giving to other people. So I had to take these experiences, I had to take the knowledge and stuff that I have and these passions that I have, and I have to pour it into other people. And if I did that, that's when I would receive the fulfillment that I'd have today. And so one of the visions that I had when I was in prison was to speak to people. And when I got out, one of the other things was to become a professional athlete. I was very successful in BMX racing in my high school years. I was on the cover of BMXer magazine, which at the time was the largest BMX racing magazine in the world.
Nice.
And I lost all of that to drugs. And I wanted to get back into the sport. So I got back into the sport. And while I was working on the craft of racing BMX and being a professional, I was trying to find an outlet to speak. At the time, it seemed like the only people that would be willing to let me come in and speak were clubs. I've learned that the microphone is a very sacred place for audiences of all types. They don't just give it to you and say, yeah, tell us your story.
Yeah.
Right. There has to be some kind of established name or brand behind who you are, how good you are, and the impact you're going to make before they hand you that microphone. Well, clubs weren't like that, because clubs like Fellowship of Christian Athletes or Youth for Christ had meetings once a week, once a month. And in those meetings, they always brought somebody in to talk about their faith. And they really just were always looking, because every month there's a lot of people. That means you're going to have to just start anybody that's willing to speak. And so somebody I knew was like, hey, why don't you come in and give your story? And so I did. And then I helped this kid get into treatment. And his mom was a teacher at an intermediate school. And she says, would you be interested in speaking to 1,200 middle schoolers? And I was like, fuck yeah.
Yeah. And you weren't scared at all?
No.
You don't get anxiety?
No.
Anticipated anxiety?
Only when I'm speaking to D1 college teams.
Okay.
Only because there's ego. Like when I walk into a room of athletes, I'm walking into a room of me. And when you get to that level of sports, you have a very big chip on your shoulder and you don't really give a shit about anybody else, right? You're not impressed by other people's stuff or things because you are there already yourself. And so when I go into that environment, it's like, are they going to listen?
Yeah.
There's a lot of ego here. But with the kids, it was like, I'm supposed to do this. Like I really felt this calling that I was supposed to do it. And so it really just went into line with how I started living my life. Was I was just going to let it rip no matter what. Like I'm just going to be me. When I walk into a room, you're going to get me. That's it. And I don't care about anything else. So you either love me, hate me, like me, or don't. And I'm okay with all of those.
Yeah.
So when I took the microphone, I just did me. Like I wasn't worried about anything else. I just did me. And the kids were like dead silent the entire time.
Wow.
And they were like, whoa. This is the best we've ever seen kids react to a speaker.
Wow.
And my mom at the time was following me and she would film me and stuff. And she was like, Anthony, I think you're really good at this. Like maybe this can be a career path for you. And as moms do, for a lot of moms do, she started looking up on the internet and finding out how much speakers make and what it takes. And she's printing all this stuff out and sending it to me. And then that was really what fueled the, okay, I'm going to take this direction. And since then it's gone from, giving presentations locally to all the schools in the area to, I'm doing stuff for governments all over the country, whether it's PSA commercials or coming in and doing keynote speeches, college sports teams, high schools, middle schools, prisons, rehabs. I've seen it all.
Yeah.
And I'm on the road 250 days a year.
250 days a year.
Yeah.
That's a lot.
Yeah. I'm usually off July and some of August, and then I'm back on the road Monday through Friday.
Wow.
Come home Saturday, sleep in, repack my bags, and Sunday morning get back on a plane like I did today at 4.
So what's your routine like to keep that balance?
This isn't going to sound very recovery.
Okay.
Because I don't really believe in balance much.
Okay.
To the degree that everybody's balance is different. That's why our slogan is find your balance.
Yes.
What
works for you.
Your balance.
Because we're all different.
And I can't give you my balance. I don't want to either. If somebody identifies with me, because I run groups at my treatment center, some of the people that come there will identify with my recovery. And they end up becoming little mentees, right? They want to know if, kind of my structure and my sobriety model and how I've laid it out, and it's built on these 7 pillars. And so I don't have a ton of balance. I just focus on helping as many people as I can.
Yeah.
And the vision behind creating as much as I can to help more people. And then I would say if there was a balance component to the other side of this scale that like kind of balanced it out, it's basketball.
Okay.
Like when I go to basketball games, I feel like a little kid.
Nice.
I completely tune out of life and I get to enjoy what I wanted to do when I was a little kid was go to the NBA. So I'm a part of meetings and I go to church at times, been in therapy for, 12 years now, in and out of therapy. And I have those components that are kind of balanced as well. But I'm mainly just focused on how do I get out there and create a bigger impact and impact more people. And that seems to just keep me ticking.
Yeah. So as long as you stay in alignment with that and your calling, then essentially that is your balance.
Yeah. Because if I'm not, then I'm out of alignment.
Right.
And when I fall out of alignment, which is doing things that I know I shouldn't be doing or doing things that create a guilt mechanism or a shame mechanism or a fear mechanism, that's when my depression starts falling.
Yeah.
That's when I want to start sleeping more. That's when I stop being intentional about kind of my daily routine and the things that I'm doing on a daily basis. And then I find myself in trouble. The good thing is that I've been focused on these types of things at my spiritual foundation for so long. I know when I'm out of alignment pretty quick.
Yeah, you have that self-awareness.
Yeah. And I know what I need to do to get myself out of that. Like for me, fitness is a huge part of my life. It's tough though, because when I'm on the road 250 days a year, and my business partner really gives me a lot of shit about this because he's like a David Goggins guy. So he's up at 4.
I met him once.
Yeah. He's
maybe
up
twice.
at 4 o'clock in the morning.
Uh-huh.
He's working out by 4:35. And by 9 a.m., he's already worked out 3 times.
3 times?
Yes. He's fucking nuts.
3 times by 9 a.m.?
Yeah. And if he's like getting on a plane with his kids and his family to go to Hawaii and the flight's at 6 o'clock in the morning, he's working out at 4 o'clock to get his first workout in before he gets on the plane. There is no compromise with that guy. So when he sees me out on the road, fitness is a big thing for me, but it becomes second to me just being able to turn off everything else and just relax.
Yeah.
Like time for me is no TV, put my phone down as much as possible, and I can sit and lay in silence.
Yeah.
Like that's how I recharge. Like 100 people around me is not how I recharge. And he's like, you need to be working out. I'm like, bro, you don't get it. Like I was just in New York yesterday. I'm now in California. I got 4 hours of sleep and I had to fly for 12 hours to get here.
Yeah.
Like I'm not trying to work out today, bro.
Yeah.
Like I want to get to my hotel. I wanted to get a shower and I want to just lay in bed and relax because tomorrow I have to speak 3 or 4 times.
Yeah. I think it's knowing what works for you.
Yeah.
You know, and really tapping into that. And I don't think a lot of people, I mean, why would they understand what it's like speaking? Sure. It's exhausting.
Yeah, it is.
Especially when, I mean, for me, just starting this new podcast, I can look on the wall and see how many people I've had so far in like a week and a half. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 9 people. And it's mentally exhausting, you know, getting into that rhythm. And then, you know, we encounter a lot of different emotions and personalities, you know, that we have to deal with. This is an emotional business that we're in.
Yep.
Our lifestyle that we live. And so, to just be able to really understand yourself and what that looks like.
Yep.
Yeah.
And it's taken a lot of practice. I'm a huge believer on removing as many distractions as possible. And for me, I had to remove a lot of the distractions. Prison is what taught me that. You know, when you get to prison, you don't have anything. You have a bed, a mattress, a wool blanket for a pillow, and you get a program that's given to you by the state. So typically in that environment, I would have like an overwhelming anxiety. I would be overwhelmed with anxiety. I would have the fear of missing out, and I was never able to sit with myself. It wasn't until I was put in a prison cell for 23 and a half hours a day. We were on lockdown when I got to Wasco State Prison, which meant they let us out for 30 minutes. I was on D yard, which is like where all the guys that were going to level 4s and level 3s.
Yeah.
So you only got out 30 minutes to take a shower, and they let 2 people out at a time. So basically you and your cellmate could get out.
That's crazy.
I got so comfortable in that environment, I actually didn't leave the cell to shower. I would take a shower inside the cell. I would bird bath inside the cell. And I'm always grateful for this because it was for the first time in my life that I had to sit through my anxiety. I couldn't go anywhere. I couldn't open the door. I couldn't call anybody. I couldn't write anybody and get a response right away. So there was no way for me to engage in some type of stimuli that could distract me from my anxiety.
Yeah.
That was the beginning of me being able to identify kind of the scale for my emotions. Like I'm out of alignment.
Yeah.
I'm in alignment.
Yeah.
Something may be out of alignment. I need to explore kind of what it is that I'm feeling because I'm not sure what this feeling is right now. You know what I'm saying? And so that's actually what was the precursor to me getting to this place that I'm at now where, you know, I know when I'm out of alignment pretty quick and what it takes for me to get back.
Yeah.
Because it's usually people, places, or things. That's it. I'm either around somebody, doing something, or at some place that's creating the discontention or the misalignment.
Yeah.
And so I check myself.
Yeah.
Take a daily inventory, right?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I feel the same way too. And I think, you know, as I've gotten older and as I've, you know, really gotten into more longer term recovery, I can really notice those things because I've done the work, you know, and like, okay, no, this isn't good for me. I don't need to be in this situation. And I love being alone too. I could never be alone before. Like back in the day, like I always had to have people around me, always had to be doing something. And now it's like, I love my own company.
Yeah.
And I'll do the same thing. I'll turn everything off. I usually do that a couple times a day, every day between podcasts or, you know, I'll take a little drive or I'll even, I live right by here. So I'll run home and same thing. I'll just turn everything off and just sit in my thoughts for a little bit.
I feel like that would have to be pretty important for you because you're so engaged with social media in terms of like, that's your impact zone, right? At least that's what I perceive it to be. And I'm the opposite, right? Like and this is something I'm trying to get more into, but it's like, I don't create a bunch of content. You know what I mean? And that takes time and energy, and you're putting yourself out there, and then you have people replying to your content and stuff. Whereas I just show you a picture and repost the people that heard me speak that were inspired, and then I move on with my day, you know? Whereas I would think that it's pretty important for you to make sure that you're disengaging from
for sure
your place of impact.
Yep. Yeah, no, absolutely. When you said the 7 pillars, what was that all about? What is that?
So I had a kid ask me 3 years ago, he said, how did you get sober? And I thought about it because I'm not a 12-step guy. Yeah. I love the 12 steps and I've done the 12 steps. I found the steps at year 9 though.
Okay.
I could sit here and tell you Jesus all day long. But for everybody that's not a Christian and for those that don't believe in Christianity or that level of spirituality, it's really fucking confusing. Like you get in the Bible and you start reading it and you're like, what? Like a sacrificial lamb, like this guy came here and like he died for us. Like, what does that mean? Yeah. It's like a really tough math equation. And you have to spend hours and hours and hours and months and years reading and studying literal, historical, and spiritual aspects of that book for it to all kind of make sense, what the mechanics are behind it, right? So if I told you that this is what I did, I dove into the Bible and there was a spiritual process through me studying the Bible, it wouldn't sound like something you would want to try. So I took some time to myself and I said, how did I get sober? Like, what have I done? And I broke it down to a foundation of spirituality and self-affirmation, a pillar of honesty that's two-folded, honesty with self and honesty with others. I tell people honesty with others is super easy, in my opinion. If you drop your wallet or money out of your purse, it's easy for me to say, hey, you dropped this. Here it is. It's extremely difficult for you to be honest with yourself and intentions. Why am I actually doing this? Why do I actually want to go there? Why do I actually engage with these people? That's the part where you have to remove yourself from everything. You have to sit in that cell that I sat in and you have to think, why do I feel this way? Why am I this way? Why do I do these things? And then along the way, you reveal, you peel back these layers of intention, motive, and you can find your true self and your honest self. And then you can be honest with yourself. And that really kind of carries you through recovery, in my opinion. Second pillar is willingness. Third pillar is discipline. Fourth is structure. Fifth is routine. Sixth is giving. And seventh is community.
I love that.
And when I break it down, if we were doing group and I had a dry erase board, I could, if I had 5 people in here and we broke down their relapse, I can put that picture up and we can pinpoint exactly what's missing from their recovery and why they relapsed. And a lot of it comes down to discipline, structure, and routine. A lot of people abandon what works because they've never actually disciplined themselves to a structured routine for extended periods of time. Yeah. We think that we got it, so we abandon what works. When reality is, if it works, we should just ride it out.
Keep doing it.
Because it's going to have ebbs and flows. There's going to be points when you're being pruned, I call you. You're going through a pruning phase, right? Where you're losing relationships, you're losing jobs, you're changing locations, and all these things feel like they're being taken from you. But me being a biblical guy, when we cut back the vine on a grape, it's so that new fruit can grow the next year, more fruit. And so many times we're in a pruning phase and it feels like it's not working. Or many times we're in a phase in which we're in the wilderness and we're not getting anything. We don't hear anything. There is no confirmation of decision and doing the right things. There's no rewards happening. And so we think that it's gone stale and that we've reached the end of the road on that. When in reality is you just keep moving. Even if you don't know what's happening, you do the next indicated right thing, as the 12-step program would say. And eventually you break through into a new level, you grow new fruit, and you go back into a phase of harvest. Yeah. And so with this setup that I've had, I started to realize this is how I got sober. And it's a huge part of PH Wellness. Every room has the pillars laid out.
Okay.
And a huge poster and
Nice.
a small definition behind each one.
Yeah. No, I love that. I did AA as well for a while. I love it. It's great. But I went on my own path, after a couple of years. Yeah, I went over to PH Wellness once to where you guys have the 2 houses, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Detox Residential.
Yep. Detox
in Temecula. Or is it considered Riverside?
Riverside.
But it's so beautiful there.
Yeah.
It's like it's the wine country.
Sure it is.
Even though I shouldn't say wine. You know what I mean, though? Yeah. It's just like really pretty.
Well, it is, their zoning laws out there are all based on agriculture because that's where the ag is in Riverside County. So we're a 4.5 acre property that overlooks probably 10 acres of citrus farms.
Yeah.
So there is a lot of farms out there, which kind of gives it that wine country vibe because it's in a hilly part on the outskirts of Riverside and Arlington Heights.
Yeah.
And so we're having to take, as a business, we're doing really well. And so we're now putting money into landscaping, and we have a 6,000 square foot fitness and rec center that we just have started to revamp. And so we brought in all new gym equipment, and we're building out a center for people to hang out and play games and watch TV. And in between, when the groups and stuff were all finished, and refurbing the houses and things like that, because it was such a cool location, we dove right in and said, this is where we're going to start.
Yeah.
And we'll build the vision out here.
Yeah.
And then we'll take what we build here, and then we'll start replicating it in other places.
Amazing. If you build it, they will come. If you build it right.
Yeah, well, and finding people is not easy when it comes to treatment. So
it's not, but if you do the right thing and you do it the right way, they will come. I'm a firm believer with that in anything in your life.
Yep.
If you have the right intentions, and just building that community, like you were saying, it's so important, because without that, there's really nothing.
Right.
I've worked at a few different treatment centers, and when I first got sober, which I really had no business working in treatment when I first got sober, but in any case, I went back to school, got, my certificate for drug and alcohol studies, and was an intern at like 7-8 months sober. And these places weren't reputable. And I didn't know, because I didn't really understand the treatment space. And the clients are just looking at their watches, when am I going to get out of here? This sucks. They're just there to do their groups and leave.
Yeah.
And you really want to create the opposite of that. You want people to come and feel the community.
Yeah. And that's, we have really prided ourselves on individualizing treatment plans. And there's 2 words I hate hearing in the treatment world. And one is dual diagnosis and individualized care plans. If you go to every website in the treatment industry, you will see those 2 things.
Yeah, for sure.
And they're full of shit, most of them. What we have prided ourselves on is we might get a carpenter that comes in, right? And you take a carpenter from their gift, and now you put them in this environment where they have to focus on this very uncomfortable part of their life. If we find out they're a carpenter, what we do is we get them the tools to build things for our facility, whether it's benches, barbecue stands, or we have a musician that comes in, and we absolutely encourage them to have their guitars or have their instruments, to engage in their gifts or their passions.
I love that.
We've had landscapers, and we go out and we buy them landscaping stuff because the one thing they like to do that takes them away from the struggles of life or the anxieties or whatever they may be feeling, shame or guilt they may be feeling in those times, is to be doing landscape work.
Yeah.
And we have 4.5 acres in property. So if you love landscaping, we want to really encourage that part of your recovery. We don't just say, this is how we do things.
Right.
And if you don't do things, get out of here.
Yeah.
We try to find something unique about each person and then use that as a motivation for treatment.
I love that, because we're all so unique in our own ways. I mean, your story is very unique.
Yes.
And so you're able to have that vision to create that for other people.
Yeah. And when we have people that come into groups, the last time I was out there running groups, I had a guy, he's like, dude, I've been to 10 treatment centers. And he's like, I've never been to one like this.
Yeah, that's rad.
He's like, your guys' groups have been the most informative and best groups I've ever been a part of. I had one guy, when I finished a group, he looked at me and was like, I have been trying to find these answers since I was a kid.
Wow.
And he was like, in 1 hour, you literally answered almost every question I've had about myself in this group.
Amazing.
Another guy's like, dude, I needed this 10 years ago.
Yeah.
And it's like, we have really prided ourselves on making sure that our employees aren't there to just get paid.
Mm-hmm.
They're not on their phones all the time. They're engaging with clients. Client care is a huge thing for me. When Matt Paz and I sat down and we came up with the vision of PH, I originally didn't want to do it because I was saving my own money to start my own.
Mm-hmm.
Traveling around, saving money from speaking. I'm going to start my own treatment center. Nobody's going to be able to tell me what this thing is supposed to be like.
Mm-hmm.
I told them there's 2 things that I care about. The rest can be yours: marketing and branding and clinical care. I was like,
smart.
If you let me design this,
Mm-hmm.
you can do CEO, operations, leadership, employee culture,
Mm-hmm.
and those things, hiring and letting go of people, hiring, firing, for lack of better terms, et cetera. And he said, cool. And so that was the big thing for me, was our culture behind how we are going to interact and treat clients.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the terminology and vocabulary that we use with people. That's our temperament. That's
Mm-hmm.
the type of groups.
Yeah.
And just the focus and care that we're willing to give people, and also chances.
Yeah.
I had a guy a couple days ago, thought he was getting kicked out because I wanted to debrief with him. He thought it was his last hoorah. And he's like, you're not kicking me out? And I was like, no, I don't expect you to be perfect.
Mm-hmm.
I expect you to be willing to get on the phone with me and debrief and be honest about what happened
Yeah.
and the mistake that you made. And we'll try not to make it, because if you keep making this one, we got to find a better place for you.
Yeah.
But we really pride ourselves on that part.
Yeah. Did you ever go to treatment, or you went to prison? Which one?
Well, prison was my treatment center.
Right.
I went to treatment one time in 2005.
Okay.
So I was convicted of armed robbery in 2005.
Mm-hmm.
My parents spent a bunch of money on an attorney, and it kept me out of prison. There was
Mm-hmm.
obviously some other factors involved. I came from the good side of town, quote unquote, looked different than some of the other people that were in there for armed robbery. They gave me an opportunity to leave on felony probation, but I had to go to 90 days of treatment.
Okay.
State-run facility in an old motel with a lot of parolees and probationees.
Mm-hmm.
Nobody was there on their own accord, or nobody was there that was sent by their families.
Yeah.
And at that time, I was 21 years old,
Mm-hmm.
and I thought I didn't think I had a problem, and I'll change when I get out. So it never worked.
Yeah.
I got out, and 30 days later, I was drinking.
Right.
Which ultimately kind of led me back to opioids, which was my safe.
Yeah. That was your drug
space.
of choice.
That was my drug of choice.
Yeah.
It could remove everything.
Yeah. How did you start using drugs?
Smoking weed, like a lot of other people that are my age, 39 years old, millennial, started smoking weed. That really wasn't my thing, even though I smoked a lot of weed. It just made me paranoid.
Yeah, me too. I did the same thing.
Yeah, it made me super paranoid, and I didn't like that part of it. And then once I opened up that door and walked in with that part,
Yeah.
then there was cocaine.
Mm-hmm.
Cocaine was cool, but it gave me more anxiety, made me more paranoid.
Yeah.
Like, I'm already anxious. I don't need more of what I hate about myself.
Mm-hmm.
And then a friend said that there was a new pill that came out, and this drug dealer that we bought Vicodin from had this Oxycontin pill.
Mm-hmm.
And he's like, we could split this pill, is what this guy says. You want to split it with me? And I said, yeah, I'll split it with you. I mean, we didn't even know what the fuck we were doing.
Yeah, yeah.
Like, at that time, we didn't know how to take a time release off. We didn't know how to crush this thing up. Like, we had a knife. Like, I remember we were in a bathroom and the fucking thing, like, shut. And we're like looking for this one pill we're supposed to split.
Yeah.
And, but once we got it done, I knew it.
Yeah, that was it.
This is it right here.
Yeah. Do you believe in gateway drugs?
No.
No.
I believe in trauma as a precursor to substance use. So I'm a big advocate or person that believes mental health is directly connected to substance use.
Mm-hmm.
There are people like Dr. Drew who don't believe that, and I would sit down and debate him all day long.
Maybe we can try to set that up.
We should set that up.
Okay.
Because I'm willing to bet he doesn't believe that anymore. Even for the person that's 40 years old that was prescribed something after a shoulder surgery and became addicted to opioids, if we sat him down in a very vulnerable therapeutic session, I will find the emotion that they're escaping from that they have no idea they're even trying to escape from.
Yeah.
And the event that triggered that. There's always an event, an emotion attached, a story that develops around those two things, and then a substance that provides relief.
Absolutely. I agree.
And then there's the addicted mind.
Mm-hmm.
That's what makes me different and you different than the person that may be using for the same thing, but their brain doesn't react the same as ours.
Right.
So it doesn't become obsessive.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't see the euphoric feeling of the sensation of getting high as something that they crave and want all the time to fix what they feel may be broken, even if they don't know they feel broken.
Right. And literally the last, I think last four people that I've had on, we've had this exact conversation and they agree with what you're saying. And it's so true. And people need to talk about that more. Do you talk about that when you go into the schools? Because I think the youngsters need to really like be aware of that.
Yeah. And this is what makes me different than most speakers that speak with kids or healthcare organizations. It took a long time in therapy for me to have this huge breakthrough with where it all started.
Mm-hmm.
I want to go to the NBA. By the time I'm 12, I had already been free throw champion for the Elks Lodge National Free Throw Contest. I was having high school and middle school coaches come and watch me play in elementary school. I'm going to be this short white kid that makes it all the way. But I'm also this short white kid that's the best player on the team that doesn't understand why my father's not there to see me. I'm going to these games alone. I'm going home alone. I'm going to these award banquets alone, and I don't know why. The only thing I know is that I want my dad there. My dad is my validating figure in the family, which means my dad is the one who speaks life into me or takes it from me with his words and his actions. My dad is an amazing person because he understood sacrifice and hard work to create opportunity for our family. And that's exactly what he was doing for my brother and I, and taking care of mom, and mom worked too. But he's a boomer. He didn't understand at that time the emotional and spiritual mechanics of life.
Yeah.
And that is, you could put all the Michael Jordan shoes on my feet, and you could put me in all of the best basketball camps and give me the best opportunity to make it to the NBA in the physical realm.
Mm-hmm.
But if you don't show up for me the way I need you, I don't actually believe I can get there, because I feel like the one person that's supposed to tell me to get there and how to get there isn't there. And that makes me confused.
Yeah.
So about the time I was 12 and 13 years old, I started to have this mechanism of confusion that came into play. And then I had these emotions that I'd never felt in my life, because something happens when we start developing into adults. We start to feel things. You know, if you think back to your elementary school years, it was really about recess, playing with kids, and sitting in a classroom that you probably didn't want to be in. But then when you get into middle school, all of a sudden you're worried about what people think. You're worried about what you're going to wear. What kind of haircut that you're going to have. The things that Tommy and Timmy and Sally said to you and how it made you feel, because nothing's ever made you feel to the degree that you felt before. And so now I have this anxious personality. I don't know why. I have this, I don't think I'm like everybody else mechanism. And I don't really fit in with anybody. And I just want to be like everybody else, because I see everybody else gathering around in circles, hanging out, smiling, laughing, and I can't do that with anybody else. Something's wrong with me.
Yeah.
And then it's like the person I need to help me through that and coach me through that and teach me how to ground myself spiritually and emotionally, self-regulate if you get into the rooms of therapy, he's not there. He's at work from 5 o'clock in the morning till 9, 10 o'clock at night. And so I had to try and learn how to navigate life by myself. And so that's when I became self-destructive. That's when my decision-making became more about impulse than logic and reason, because logic and reason was a much longer route around the mountain. If I used impulse, I could trick my brain into thinking that I was at the top of the mountain, and the top of the mountain would be self-regulation or feeling okay.
Yeah.
So I would attach myself in relationships that were toxic. I would make decisions in classrooms that would make me the center of attention, even though I didn't want to be the center of attention, that would distract me from my anxiety and the things that I was struggling with.
Yeah.
The groundwork for what was going to become in my life started in my middle school years. And so what I do is I take these youngsters through the middle school years of my life. I tell them that I sat in these seats and I looked at the end of the gym doors and I would wait for my dad. And I would have this conversation saying, come on, Dad. Come on. Because you promised me. you were going to get off of work this time. You told me that you were going to show up and come and watch me play. And then the disappointment that I felt every day that he didn't show up after he gave me those promises. And what I tell him is in that moment, I had no idea I was creating a belief system about myself. And this is the PH Wellness mantra. The opposite of what was my first belief system. I can't, I won't, and I'll never be able. Interesting thing about belief systems is we come to these belief systems at a time when our brain is not developed enough to understand our experiences and what it actually means about ourselves. So we have these experiences that create emotions, and then we have the story attached to it. That story is what takes you to the belief system. It's either I can, I will, and I'm able, or I can't, I won't, and I'm not able. You can break down every decision you make, every relationship you get involved in, every attempt you've had at recovery that may not have been successful, and put it into a belief system. If you're making decisions that are still self-destructive, if you're making decisions that are still toxic in your relationships, you may need to take a look at your belief system and what you actually believe about yourself.
Yeah.
Because what you believe is what you'll do. And so I take them through this time and I show them how we develop belief systems in our lives. And I think what's made me effective is I'm just telling my story.
Yeah.
And while I'm telling this story, I'm dropping these nuggets that I wish I had when I was their age, is be mindful of how your decisions are backed by your emotional wellness and your belief system. Be mindful that each and every one of us are uniquely going to go through certain experiences that make us feel self-doubt, fear, anxious, rejection, depressed, sad, grief, all of these emotions that are very uncomfortable that nobody wants to feel. But the story we tell ourselves about those feelings is more important than the feelings themselves.
Yeah.
Because that story is why we end up doing what we do. You know, we break down everybody's story that way. And so when people call me and they say, what do you do? That's what I do. I tell my story and I connect these kids to the truth. And that is that every person that uses substances, even if they're addicted or not, it has to do with the emotions.
Yep.
That's it.
Yeah.
And I will debate anybody that's highly educated on their logic of why people just socially get involved in things.
Yeah.
But even at a social level, it's still emotional.
It still is. Yeah, it absolutely is. And in this society, it's encouraged, go and drink, have a couple drinks, before you go meet somebody, or it's like we've been removed from the way we should be having these natural connections, because now everything's gone to like social media and the way people communicate. And so when people do meet in person now, or actually talk on the telephone or something like that, people get a lot of anxiety surrounding it.
Right.
Like I have a son, he just turned 15, and unfortunately he lives in that world of social media, and they don't talk on the phone. Everything is done, through text or just through the apps. And he has anxiety. He deals with anxiety, and he's dabbled. He won't mind me saying it because we talk about it, but he's smoked weed. And he says, well, it's because I have anxiety. That's why I'm doing it, because I have anxiety. Okay, well, let's really look at that and where that's coming from, because and that's the thing, is that these kids aren't really looking at that.
Sure. Well, how do they know?
I was just going to say, and they don't have the awareness to know. So it's amazing that someone like you is out there showing them.
Yeah. I did a presentation. The administrators weren't too happy with me. Like I say, I just do my thing. And the sheriff was there, the chief was there, superintendents were there. It was a middle school presentation. And a young female says, I get why we shouldn't do the hard stuff, but why can't I smoke weed? This is during Q&A. It's a 13-year-old in front of 500 peers.
Wow.
And I said, well, are you willing to come up here? And we can talk about this. She says, yes. She comes up on stage. And I said, well, I'm going to ask you a very personal question. If you're willing to be vulnerable, I would appreciate it. If not, I understand. I said, do you smoke weed? And she says, no, I just had a kid. She's 13. And I said, okay, is there anybody in this room that's willing to raise their hand and say that they smoke weed and come on stage? And somebody in the back does. And I can already see, like, the people that brought me there, like, yo, what are you doing?
Yeah.
These are kids. My argument is these kids are telling you that they're smoking weed. Like, we have to start breaking this stuff down.
Yeah.
Like, you can't just give them fear and expect this to deter them from this. We have to educate them on the true mechanics behind what's actually happening. So she comes up and I said, why do you smoke weed? She says, because it makes me feel better. And I said, okay, I actually could see how that would be. It changes the state of your feeling. You like the way it makes you feel, and so you feel better. Would you agree? She says, yes. I said, well, how do you feel when the high's over? And I said, do you like that feeling? And she says, no. And I said, so what do you do to stop that? And she goes, smoke more. And I said, okay, what if your friend or your boyfriend or your partner, you get in an argument and you're really angry? What do you do? She says, I smoke.
Yeah.
I go, when the high is over, are you still angry? And she says, yes. And I said, so what do you do? And she goes, I smoke more. So I stopped and I turned and I looked at the girl and I said, this is why weed is no different than the hard stuff. Because what we use the hard stuff for is the same as what we use weed and drinking for.
Yeah.
I looked at the other female and I said, what I believe you deserve is to understand why you're angry and be able to communicate to the person that made you angry what made you angry, and then hold a boundary if that's necessary for that person to understand that if you do this again, we can no longer be together because you are making me feel misaligned within myself. You're tilting my emotional scale too far to the direction that it shouldn't be.
Yeah.
So I'm going to make a decision to remove you from being in my life so that my emotional scale finds balance and I can sit with myself and love who I am. I go, otherwise, you just end up continuing to use weed as a way to try and stop yourself from feeling.
Yeah.
Once that wears off, though, you still have the anger. You still have this feeling within yourself that you don't like. And I said, this is why it's no different than the hard stuff.
Yeah.
To me, that conversation is important because when you show them this, I don't care if it's then in that moment or 10 years from now, something may click inside of them and then remember just the part that said, I always feel this way when it's done because I'm not looking at what's really bothering me.
Exactly. Yeah.
That's what I want.
No, absolutely. Yeah. And I always say to people, because still a lot of people are to each their own, the California sober, we like to call it out here. But I always say, but why do you need it? Because you're still masking something. Something is still going on that you're having to mask, So, yeah. And when you numb out the good and the bad. Like people think, oh, I'm just like, for me, when I was doing a lot of opiates and taking a lot of Xanax, I thought I was just numbing out my trauma. I had a lot of like pretty gnarly childhood trauma, and that's what started me down the path I went. And, I thought that it was just numbing out the bad. Like, oh, I just wasn't going to feel that trauma anymore, but it was everything. Like I didn't really have any emotions. I wasn't really happy or excited or didn't really feel love properly or any of those things.
Did you know how to identify your emotions?
No.
Yeah.
Not back then.
I think that's one of the most common traits for those that have an addicted mind.
Yeah.
We're just a flat out inability to identify emotions.
And honestly, it probably isn't until like the last 2.5, 3 years that I've really been able to start understanding all that stuff. Like the first 2-3 years of sobriety, it was just learning how to just live on basic terms, and
just not pick up.
Yeah, exactly.
Because that's worse.
Yeah, exactly. It's a ugly process, but it's so beautiful, if you can just take it one day at a time and get through it. But yeah, it took a lot of work, and I'm still a work in progress.
Yeah, so I'm a huge believer on you're a newcomer for 5 years.
Well, I love that.
I don't think you'll know what you're made of in recovery until 5 to 10. Somewhere in between 5 and 10, you have a breakthrough that you're in.
Yeah.
And you become more emotionally aware. And then I think 10 to 15 for me has been how to actually heal the broken stuff. Like, how do you engage in a relationship and not inflict your pain on somebody else. When you want to say, fuck you, you piece of shit, you say, that really hurt me.
Yeah.
I really feel betrayed when that happens. I am so disappointed that we have gotten to this place, and yet the decision was made knowing this would hurt me. Because deep down inside, I still want to say, what the fuck?
Yeah.
You know, the old impulse, you hurt me, you're going to feel even more hurt than I felt.
Yep.
You know, so I'm going to just create more destruction. Somewhere in between 10 and 15 for me has been, how do I feel and think the old Tony, but do what I've learned from year 7-ish, 8-ish up until this point.
Yeah. And I love that you said that, because it's so true. Because that's how it's really felt. And I've gotten to a point now where I'm a pretty peaceful, calm person. When I first got sober, I was always told to go sit on my hands, you know, that whole pause thing, because super impulsive, needed to have all the answers. And I would just emotionally react like so gnarly all the time. And I still have my moments for sure, especially with my ex-husband, that like, you know, poke the bear enough times, I'll end up reacting.
Yeah.
And then I hate myself afterwards for it, you know, like,
Yeah.
I don't want to be that person. But at the same time, being able to give myself some grace and forgive myself, because that's a huge thing too. And I'm sure you see that a lot with these youngsters is, I mean, do they, in your opinion, do they even have the ability or the awareness to forgive themselves, that self-forgiveness? Because I know it's so hard even as adults.
I think that the youth today are more aware of their emotions than anybody else.
Why do you think that?
Because what we've learned. We have so many different social aspects of life that we now understand how they work and what they create. Let's just use lower socioeconomic neighborhoods, for example. We know that crime is higher there.
Yeah.
We know that broken homes are more common there. We know that sexual abuse is more rampant in there. We know that drug abuse is more rampant in there. We know that these types of environments, when there's not a stable home, create certain types of outcomes and behaviors. So then now we're educating kids on these types of things. We're hearing, I never heard anxiety in high school.
True. Yeah.
What?
Me neither.
Looking back on it, nobody ever talked about that.
Yeah, no, they didn't. No.
Nobody talked about grief. If when my best friends died, there was nobody that said, Tony, this is what's going to happen over the next however long it takes. You're going to go through this process.
Yeah.
And in this process is going to be bartering, sadness, anger, confusion. Then these processes that lead you back to being happy and fulfilled and okay.
Yeah.
So now we have all of these teachings. What I have found is they now know so much, but their minds aren't developed enough that they use what they feel as kind of a shield to stop people from making them uncomfortable and life coming at them the way it's going to come at them.
Yeah.
And we see that with the way people react on social media. The word offended is probably the most common word in the American culture now, is you offended me.
Yeah.
You said something that was offensive, when the reality is, look, we all have had the same emotions since the beginning. Should we be evolving and getting better at communication and understanding how we do things? Yes. But at the same time, I don't have to fucking like you.
Yeah.
And that doesn't make me a bad person.
No. And that's, yes, that's needs to be said.
I can tell you that I don't like you.
Right.
You know, I did a podcast in Ohio and a guy looked at me and he was like, you're full of shit. And I was like, bro, y'all paid me to be here. And you're going to take this time to now tell me that you think my story's full of shit and that I'm not real and that I'm a Tony Robbins type of guy. But I was able to sit through that and explore why he felt that way.
Yeah.
You know, I actually turned my phone on and started recording it because it was like in that moment, I had to take this very uncomfortable situation and I had to process it in which I wasn't going to give him what he wanted, which was this reaction.
Yes.
With youth, I think they believe that they're entitled to never feel offended, that they're entitled, that all people are always going to accept their views on life. And so it's like they know what anxiety is.
Yeah.
They know what grief is. They know what personality disorders are and mental health and all of these things. But I think the way they're trying to apply it to themselves and for others that are around them is probably not the best way to get around the mountain, because when I have anxiety, it is some detrimental state, not just a moment that you can move through and get stronger from.
Yeah.
You know, we see that with a lot of the doctors and people that are putting out the rhetoric that says, you know, people that are heavily involved in fitness, like my business partner, are actually incorrect. That you can stand on a scale at 300 pounds and be healthy. The reality is they're lying to you. At 300 pounds, you're not healthy. You need to make some different decisions. And I'm sorry if that makes you feel uncomfortable.
Yeah.
But the truth is, at 300 pounds, you're probably not as healthy as you can be. Let's work on changing some of those decisions.
Yeah.
And that's that whole thing where we're trying to create this environment where everybody right where they're at is perfect.
Yeah, no, I don't agree with that.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I like to try to take the mindset of what you think of me is none of my business and be okay with that. Because I used to care so much about what other people thought of me. And it's such an unhealthy place to be in. And I can only imagine what it's like. I mean, I see it with my son, but just this younger generation with this false sense of reality, especially. But we're not all meant to like each other, and that's okay. But as long as we're respectful, you know, at the end of the day, that should be enough.
Yep. And we're not always going to feel great.
No, we're not.
That's the big one for me.
Yeah. What do you do on your tough days?
My mantra is you can't win them all. Anybody that gets close to me hears that many times. You can't win them all. What I will try to do is engage in all of my responsibilities to the best of my ability. And at the end of the day, when I put my head on my pillow, I'll say, you can't win them all. I got another shot tomorrow. That's it. You know, I discipline, structure, routine. My definition for discipline is your ability to do good work when you don't want to do good work at all. So when I'm anxious, when a relationship has turned south, when somebody on the job has been has disapproved of something I've done, and I have to feel the discomfort that I'm in, I still get done the things I told myself I was going to get done that day. At the end of the day, I just tell myself I can't win them all. And to me, winning is going to bed feeling great.
Yeah.
Knowing I did the right thing. I'm a big mantra guy. So these small phrases that I tell myself through these moments when things aren't going good. But if I'm anxious, I have to get to the gym.
Yeah.
Like I have to. And if I'm anxious for a period of time, I have to get to my therapist. Like I need to start talking about whatever it is I need to talk about. You know, I have a support group, pick up the phone every day.
Yeah.
I'm talking to somebody I know loves me, even if I don't feel like I love myself in that moment. Every day.
Yeah. And asking for help and reaching out is strength.
Yep.
And a lot of people don't see that. You know, they think, oh, I should just be tough and I got this, you know?
Well, I think there's the idea too, is that if I just write it out, eventually it'll get better. Well, how long are you going to write it out? How long have you been writing it out and it hasn't gotten better? Maybe writing it out is actually asking for help. Maybe writing it out is actually having that conversation with your spouse. You know, like you're already sleeping in separate rooms. You're already walking by each other and act like you don't know each other. Like maybe writing it out is saying, you know what? Today, we're having a conversation.
Yeah.
You tell me your side. I'll tell you my side. Let's see if there's a middle, or let's just see if we just needed to tell each other what we felt based on whatever was happening.
Yeah.
Because what I've learned is that conversation is the key to freedom.
Yeah, it really is. Yeah. How do you keep your drive? Like, I know you said you're consistent and you go do these things that, you know, you help others and it gives you back a lot. But how do you keep that on a daily basis?
I don't know anything else.
Yeah.
The only other thing I know is how to put a way too much dope in my arm at one time. Everything I did for 23 years of my life didn't work. That's with my talent in sports. Sucked in a classroom, emotionally discontent, hated who I was. And the only other thing I know is what I'm doing right now. So I have two options. Keep going or just go back to who I was. There's no middle ground for me.
Yeah.
If I'm in the middle, I'm actually closer to the end. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
Like if I take a step back to try and find a lesser version of me, then I'm going to go back to misery.
Mm.
So I just keep doing what I'm doing and discipline takes over. So then it's like, so I use this analogy in my speeches, and it is, since I've started using it last year, it has actually been one of the better parts of my presentation. I talk about discipline and how I learned discipline in prison. I learned it because in a jail cell, you can't pass time without learning how to do things, like clean your cell. You could sit on your bunk, but you'll be in misery, or you can get out and do something, a daily affirmation or some esteemable act within this small 8x12 part of your life, clean your cell, and you'll feel good about yourself.
Yeah.
So I learned how to do good work when I didn't want to do good work while I was in prison. And how I break that down is how discipline has catapulted me or been the catalyst to get me to where I'm at today is that when the ice cube falls out of the refrigerator, how many of us just kick the ice cube under the fridge? Everybody raises their hand when I ask, even the adults, because this is something that we all have done at some point in our life or continue to do in this moment. Then I say, well, what do you think my mind thinks now? After 15, 16 years of growth mindset, what do you think my mind thinks when the ice cube falls and hits the ground?
What do I think?
Yeah, what do you think?
You still kick it under?
My initial thought is to kick it under the fridge.
Yeah.
Discipline, what I've learned how to do is treat the ice cube no different than I treat this podcast, than I'm going to treat my group tomorrow morning at my treatment center, no different than I'm going to treat my speech in front of a Division I sports team or for the government in New Jersey at a healthcare conference. I can think to kick it under the fridge, but every time I get down and I pick the ice cube up and I throw it in the sink, I'm building a discipline muscle. Over time, the instinctual thought of kicking it under the fridge becomes a millisecond versus me knowing just to do what I do.
Yeah.
Same if you were to go shopping with me. I will walk the shopping cart back into the store, even if it's a quarter mile, or put it into the cart rack. Same as if you come to my bathroom, there will never be piss on a toilet seat, ever. And if you're a guy listening to me and you're still pissing on the toilet seat, you got a lot of fucking work to do.
Yeah, don't do that.
Because the way I see it is, me leaving piss on the toilet seat then becomes leaving my Q-tips on the ground when I throw them in the trash or kicking the ice cubes under the fridge. And then I start making small sacrifices in my recovery.
Yeah.
I'm going to go to this bar and hang out with these people. I'm not going to drink, and I might not drink the first time, but I'm already starting to make compromises in my recovery.
Yeah.
So for me to get to here, it's really about learning how to pick up the ice cube every time it hits the ground and put it in the sink no matter what.
Yeah.
To put my shopping cart back into the shopping cart rack or take it inside the store, no matter what. No matter how hot it is, doesn't matter if it's raining. And if I piss on the toilet seat, I clean it. Because those small things teach me how to execute when it's time to execute on the big things. Like when I'm depressed and I don't want to get out of bed. I feel like I don't want to get out of bed, but what do? I get out.
Yeah.
Because I've learned how to treat that through the picking up of the ice cube. And so that's what it is.
Mic drop. I love that. No, that's great. People that are struggling with mental health, these youngsters, what's that conversation that you have with them?
So the key to that is conversation. You cannot keep your story, your feelings, and your experiences to yourself. The sooner we find a safe space to have a conversation, the sooner we find freedom from self. This is all laid out in the beginning years, and this is like a redundant message.
Yeah.
You have to have a safe space to have a conversation. You have to find a community of like-minded people that you know love you even when you don't love yourself. And that could be doing anything as long as it's not self-destructive or hurting others in the process. The hard part is some of us are not going to have a safe space at home. It's not with mom and dad. We're going to have to find it at school. We're going to have to find it in the rooms of Narcotics and Alcoholics Anonymous. We're going to have to find it at our church group. We're going to have to find it at a grief group. We're going to have to find it with a therapist. We have to find a safe space where we can say, this is what I'm feeling. This is what I'm going through. And I literally feel like I'm going to die right now.
Yeah.
I am so overwhelmed. I am so filled with stress. I don't know what I'm going to do. I have bills that I have to pay and I'm not going to be able to pay them. Like those conversations with people are really the freedom from self. And when you're younger, you're feeling certain types of ways that you don't even understand what it is that you're feeling.
Mm-hmm.
And so we need to have those conversations in a safe space so that person who's the trusted adult can give you the GPS
Mm-hmm.
to what to do.
Yeah.
When you feel this, try this.
Yeah.
When you feel this, stay away from this.
Mm-hmm.
Let's try this.
Yeah.
And see what happens, right?
Yeah.
It's that we're creating a response system. It's like
Mm-hmm.
programming a computer software.
Yeah. And to know you're not alone.
Yep.
You know, I feel like a lot of people think, oh, I'm different or no one's going to understand me. They don't have it like I do. It's like there's a lot of people out there.
Yeah.
That
And
know.
they may not have it like you.
Mm-hmm.
That's okay.
That's okay. Yeah.
You just need somebody that can listen to you.
Mm-hmm.
You know, that's one thing that I've had to get better at is, do you want my advice or you want me to just listen? Because I can do either, you know, and if you tell me advice, I'll give you advice. But if you just want me to listen, just tell me what it is that you want to tell me, and I'm here to support you.
I think that's really important in adult relationships because I feel like I know I've been that way in relationships where I just want my boyfriend to just listen, but it's like this knee-jerk reaction that we want to help give advice, and it's at no fault of them to do it, but being able to recognize that and be like, hey, I just want you to listen to me right now.
Yeah.
Or being able to ask what you said, like, do you want my advice or do you want me to just listen?
Yeah. And that's a two-way street.
Yeah.
Because the person has to say, I just want you to listen right now.
Yeah. Right.
You know, if you get to a place where your partner jumps in like I do, because I'm a coach and et cetera, that makes me always want to get in and provide solution. The partner needs to say, I just need you to listen.
Mm-hmm.
So then the person can receive and say, okay, my role right now is not to say anything. It's just to comfort and show compassion or empathy to this person that's sharing right now.
Yeah.
Communication is very difficult, especially in relationships. It takes a lot of work and practice and forgiveness and holding space for the other person to come to a place where they can see that they have a role and you can see that you have a role, and then meet in the middle and make your apologies, your amends, and then directly communicate what was missing from that moment.
Yeah. It's a lot of work.
Being an adult sucks.
It's hard sometimes. What have you learned about yourself the most through this whole process?
That I don't need to be normal. That I'm not supposed to be normal. And that I was given a unique set of experiences, the ways I feel for the world and the way I feel for others. And there's no other person like that. And I'm cool with that now.
Yeah.
You know, like I say, I and I think you had said you identified with that too, is that, you know, everybody's opinion meant so much to me. Growing up, it was like I had to have a certain status and I needed to make a certain amount of money and I needed to look a certain way to some degree. And what I found is me wanting to be like everybody else was the key to me getting lost. Instead of me wanting to be like me and searching that process out. And so the last 16 years has really been about, who am I? That's it. And I have always believed, once I had this breakthrough, when we ask ourselves, who am I? You're not allowed to say something you do. Some therapists will disagree with that. I'm okay with it. But if I ask you who you are, I want to know who you are emotionally. So if somebody says, Tony, who are you? I would say a very driven individual that has an enormous amounts of compassion, empathy for every walk of life. A very forgiving individual that can look past somebody's wrongdoing or somebody's mistake and forgive that person. I'm a person who's very intentional. And so when I engage in things, it's very intentional. I don't get involved in things that I don't necessarily care about. Passionate. Tony is very passionate. He's a passionate person, and his passions are what drive him to do the things that he does. And that answer has been important for me, because if you take everything away from me today, I'll figure something out tomorrow. Because compassion, empathy, passion, intention, forgiveness, they're useful somewhere.
Mm-hmm.
So if you take away the places I'm using them today, I'll find something else tomorrow that I can start the process on using those.
Mm-hmm.
And that never changed.
Yeah.
I have always been that person since day one.
Mm-hmm.
The day that my mind processed reality and could feel, I have been that person. And that took a lot of self-work, a lot of meditation, a lot of thinking about who I am from an emotional standpoint. And I've learned that I've been that way since I was a little kid.
It's amazing.
Yeah.
There's hope for anybody out there. You
Absolutely.
know, you can find who you are.
Yeah. And we don't do it alone though.
Yeah, we don't. Final thoughts. Someone's struggling out there right now. What would you say?
Number one, you have to find somebody to talk to. Even if you don't feel like you can talk to anybody, you have to talk to somebody. The other thing is sometimes we have made an attempt to talk to somebody and they didn't hear us. Just because one person doesn't hear us doesn't mean that the next person won't.
Mm-hmm.
One of the hardest things I've had to learn in life is nobody's coming to save you.
Yeah.
And in the same breath, nobody's going to bring you your dream. Nobody's going to hand you your own treatment center. Nobody's going to make you a professional athlete. Nobody's going to give you a speaking platform of 250 days a year. You're going to have to do it yourself, which kind of contradicts you're not going to do it alone. You're not going to do it alone means that there are people that are there to support who you are, what you dream, and what you deserve to have.
Mm-hmm.
In the process of creating those around, in the process of attracting those around you that are your support group, there has to be something in yourself that does the work.
Mm-hmm.
And so if you're struggling, you have to find somebody to talk to. If you're struggling, you have to understand that decisions need to be made and nobody's going to make that decision for you. You're going to have to want it for yourself.
Mm-hmm.
Even if you don't feel like you deserve it in that moment.
Yeah.
You can, you will, and you're able.
Yeah. Perfect. Thank you so much.
My pleasure.
You're
Thank
awesome.
Thank you for having me. It's
Of
been
course.
great. I love what you got going on and what you're building, the vision behind it. I think
Thank you.
it's amazing. I seriously wish you nothing but the best.
Thank you so much. Thanks, you guys. We'll see you next time. Bye.